Это не блеф.
It turns out he wasn't bluffing. With a blinding flash, columns of Ukrainian tanks are vaporized as they charge towards Russian lines. Where once hundreds of Zelensky's troops, or an airfield or a command post stood, there is now nothing but an irradiated wasteland. Russia has launched a 5-kiloton nuclear warhead fitted to an Iskander missile with a range of 300 miles. The Red Army's secretive 12th Directorate has managed to evade US satellite early warning by using this nuclear base in Belgorod, 22 miles from the Ukrainian border. Perhaps a city is destroyed, along with thousands of people who once called it home. Western unity cracks. Biden pulls US support for the war. Or else Kiev, out of sheer horror, sues for peace. Vladimir Putin emerges victorious. This is a fantasy, but it is one that is likely playing out inside the mind of the world's most dangerous man as he stares down the barrel of defeat in Ukraine. In the last fortnight, Putin has lost thousands of square miles of territory while hurriedly annexing regions, conscripting men, and resorting to nuclear threats as his war goes from bad to worse.
А те, кто пытаются шантажировать нас ядерным оружием, что роза ветров может развернуться и в их сторону.
There are now hints he could resort to the Russian doctrine of escalate to de-escalate to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, after launching new strikes on Kiev this week. Putin's generals have long theorized that they could use limited atomic warfare to inflict unacceptable damage on an enemy, split Western resolve, and coerce them into accepting defeat. Here's how that ladder of escalation could work. He could carry out a nuclear test or fire into a remote piece of land or ocean, demonstrating his might while causing as little damage as possible. He could strike an important Ukrainian military base, wiping out part of Kiev's army while minimizing civilian casualties. He could attempt a decapitation strike against President Zelensky or other senior members of the government. He could strike a major city, aiming to kill as many civilians as possible in an attempt to break Ukraine's will to fight. Or he could aim at supply lines into Ukraine, which may involve striking the border regions of a NATO country, such as Poland. How the West might respond to such an attack would depend on exactly which of these options Putin chooses, and the kind of weapon he uses to get the job done. His large strategic nuclear weapons that can destroy cities lie in silos on intercontinental missiles fired by Putin himself giving an order with his Cheget briefcase. His tactical weapons are spread throughout a network of so-called Object S bunkers and would have to be paired with delivery systems, most likely a medium-range missile. Experts believe it's highly unlikely Putin would use one of his largest weapons because of the risk of mutually assured destruction. Instead, it is feared Putin could use one of Russia's less powerful but still devastating tactical nuclear weapons. At the lowest end of the scale, the West could respond with a weak diplomatic attack intended to make Putin an international pariah to his allies, including China and India. Moving up the scale, NATO might decide to respond using its conventional or non-nuclear military forces. US technology is so advanced that it would probably have little trouble decimating the Russian armed forces. In Syria in 2018, the US claims to have killed up to 300 Wagner mercenaries in a firefight with special forces, with no response from Russia. The alliance could wipe out the Russian unit which fired the nuke using either long-range missiles or airstrikes, which may mean attacking inside Russia itself. It could sink the Russian Black Sea Fleet, or establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. That would involve NATO aircraft fighting Russian planes, blowing up ground units, and likely attacking anti-air systems and airfields on Russian territory to ensure none of Putin's air force could get into the skies. David Petraeus, former head of the CIA, has suggested the Allies could go as far as wiping out every single Russian unit in Ukraine, along with the Black Sea Fleet. Such a mission may take days or weeks to complete and would see NATO units directly fighting with Russia, possibly on land, sea and air, in a situation Joe Biden has described as World War III. At the most extreme end of the spectrum, the West could respond by using one of its own nuclear weapons as a demonstration of power as part of an effort to force Putin to back down. NATO does have a small stockpile of tactical nuclear weapons which could be loaded onto bombers or fitted to missiles and used to take out important Russian military bases or infrastructure. American nuclear doctrine would also allow Biden, acting alone, to strike at Russia or its allies. In a set of controversial US war games staged in 2016, Participants faced with the exact scenario of Russia using nukes in Ukraine opted to nuke Belarus, a Russian ally which is not directly involved in the fighting, instead of hitting Russia itself. However, any NATO or US nuclear response is seen as extremely unlikely. Hitting a Russian ally risks sparking international outcry. Hitting Russian targets in Ukraine would cause huge damage on its territory. And striking targets inside Russia with nukes risks provoking the kind of tit-for-tat escalation that might lead to Armageddon. If you like this video, watch this one to find out more about Putin's health, or this one on the Nord Stream pipeline.